What's the postgame bourbon today?
Post-game bourbon today, little tumbling dice, 11-year MGP juice. We should have brought more. Clearly, we needed it after today's game.
Yeah, just a tough showing for the Buckeyes. Got Tulsa next week. I think that this is a team that is going to give up points all season. I'm worried about the defense. I don't know how Kerry Combs is going to. I don't think he's going to have a job next year, man. I really don't.
I think the question more becomes is, will he have it through the end of this year? Obviously, that's not Ohio State's thing to do. I'm not sitting here saying it will happen, but good Lord, you can't. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, and they're not getting different results.
Some good stuff to take away today. Ohio State had 612 yards of total offense. On one hand, that's really good. On the other hand, you're like, how do you lose a game with 612 yards of total offense? You don't see that often. 3 receivers over 100 yards for the first time in school history. C.J. Stroud, within a whisker of breaking Dwayne Haskins' school record for passing yards. Stroud finished 35 of 54 for 484, 3 touchdowns for 1 costly interception towards the end of the game. I don't know. How much of this falls on Dave?
I think plenty of it. I mean, he brought Kerry Combs in. Kerry Combs never been a defensive coordinator before, and brought him in and handed him the keys, and it is not panned out. So I think that certainly falls on his shoulders. I think offensively, I don't have as many concerns there. When you're breaking in a new quarterback,
right?
You can't count on C.J. Stroud to win the game in week 2. You need to make sure he doesn't lose it for you. And he definitely didn't lose it for you. I mean, he had a yeoman's effort.
Ohio State will be fine, I think. Passing the ball, that's what Ryan Day does. But concerns again, defense, the running game. I mean, this is an Oregon team that was playing without two of their best players.
Yeah, and 5 defensive starters.
Yeah, 5 defensive starters out. Ohio State hardly cracks 100 yards on the ground. Spends most of the game, most of the third quarter, stuck on 90. And that's a backfield full of good running backs. And offensive line is very seasoned, very good. Concerned about the running game?
I mean, a little, but not a ton, because I think when you're playing from behind constantly, you're just not going to run the ball a ton. So I think that's part of the reason. You had 31 rushing attempts, you had 54 passing attempts. So they kind of just were behind the chains all day, behind the scoreboard all day, and I think that affected the running game a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it wasn't awesome. I mean, Mayan Williams averaged 5.5, Henderson only 4.5 for the team. It went down to 4.1 because Stroud had some sacks in there. But yeah, overall, a tough day. I don't think the offensive line was great. Certainly at the end of the game, pass blocking was a little bit weak, but that's probably 5th or 6th down the rung of major of concerns you might have with this team. I'm certainly not worried about the offensive line over the long haul.
Yeah, you look at the flip side, Oregon running back C.J. Verdell, 20 rushes, 161 yards, the big 77-yard rushing touchdown in the third quarter, right at the start of the third quarter.
Right.
The Ducks had taken a 14-7 lead into the half. All of a sudden, they're up 21-7 in the third quarter. And then the teams basically traded touchdowns down the stretch, but Ohio State could never close within more than 1 touchdown.
Well, it was wild. I mean, at one point, you're celebrating that Ohio State had back-to-back defensive stops.
Yeah.
I mean, name a year when Ohio State's good. You're like, oh, good. They strung together back-to-back stops, for God's sakes. I mean, that should be a given. That's going to happen more often than not. And today they were only able to do that, once. They got their first 2 3-and-outs of the entire year. Now, those were timely, and the offense needed to answer, and the offense didn't. So I will say that. But again, if you're sitting here freaking out about the offense, you didn't watch the full game, because not only was the game defensively painful to watch, but I mean, like we said, not only did Coleman struggle, but even going into halftime and trying to make some adjustments, all that happened after any adjustments that were made, which I don't think were any, Oregon actually ended up scoring more points in the second half than they did the first. They ran for more yards than they did in the first, and they averaged 8.4 yards a carry in the second half after averaging 5.7 in the first. So adjustments there were no adjustments made.
Yeah, tough afternoon for the defense.
Moorhead had owned Combs all day.
Yeah, guy that has some experience playing Ohio State from his time at Penn State as an offensive coordinator there. Defensive side of the ball, Taraji Mitchell, 11 tackles, Ronnie Hickman, 10, Haskell Garrett, 6. But again, no sacks. Only 1 TFL in the entire afternoon for this defense. I'm worried, man. I think this is one of those years where they got all the weapons, except the defense is going to let this team down, and they're not going to be able to outscore really good teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of those things when you know you're going to try to outscore teams and you got a Justin Fields, there's only so much you can put on a new guy. I think, Stroud's fine. I don't think he's elite. I think maybe he'll evolve into that. We'll see. But, that's a lot to ask him to throw it 54 times in his second collegiate start because your defense is garbage. I mean, that's a lot to ask.
Yeah, other scores around the Big Ten right now. Illinois walloped by Virginia 42-14. Big Baby Birds off to a pretty bumpy start. Did beat Nebraska over the season, so he's got that, but not the start they want. Michigan State 42, Youngstown State 14, Northwestern 24, Indiana State 6. Here's an interesting one. Minnesota 31, Miami of Ohio 26.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, obviously their bell cow's out for the season. Ibrahim hurt last week, but yeah, it gives you maybe a little bit more insight into why Ohio State, struggled so bad today. Minnesota's probably just okay.
Yeah, and kind of puts that into perspective. Can this team still win the Big Ten?
Oh, I think they can. I mean, I think they can, but it's going to depend on Stroud and the offense being really good because I think the defense is only going to get so much better. I mean, we're sitting here crushing Combs for scheme, no adjustments, and whatever, and rightfully so, but I still am troubled, like we were talking about earlier, is that so many guys are playing so many snaps at linebacker and even at safety. And I know Proctor went out hurt, but when you're cycling that many guys after this week in press conferences, you went out of your way to talk about how you're going to trim down the rotation. It tells me that you still don't have any guys that have really stepped up to say they're the clear-cut guy that should play.
Yep.
I mean, T-Raw's playing. I think Taraji Mitchell seems like he's playing fine. But at safety, Bryson Shaw stepping in for Proctor. I don't know how good he was today. Eichenberg, not necessarily great. Kayvon Pope played a little bit. A lot of different guys in there at linebacker, and I didn't see any of them really as difference makers today. Safety and Bullet, Lathan Ransom out there, saw him take advantage of a couple times. Cavazos, to me, seems like he's really struggling.
Yeah, he is.
They can't set the edge. I mean, how many times was the same play ran today?
Yeah.
They knew it was coming to the short side. They could not set the edge. They could not stop it.
Yeah.
That's scheme for sure, but that's also the Jimmies and the Joes they got to step up and make plays, and they're not doing it.
Yeah, to your point, they hit that edge all afternoon. Even they scored 3 touchdowns that way. Even when they needed a clutch fourth down at the end of the game, hit the edge again.
Yeah,
they had it all afternoon. They knew it was there.
It's a very average quarterback. I mean, Brown's experienced, but nobody's like, oh my God, Anthony Brown's gonna be in the Heisman conversation.
He went 17 of 35 for 236 and 2 touchdowns. Okay, Dave, but 17 to 35 doesn't jump out at anyone or sound spectacular. Post-game comments from Ryan Day is already saying we got to fix the defense.
Well, again, what are you going to fix? I mean,
do?
You're trotting out the same thing again, like it's today. Halftime adjustments, if there were any, you were actually worse in the second half than you were the first half.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what can get better there, but they better worry about the offensive side and get them humming to the elitist level they can possibly reach because they're going to have to win 40 to 35 to win games.
Right, absolutely. Let's read some.
What is
it? Mean tweets?
Yeah, it's probably any tweet.
All right, let's see. We got Drew Roush saying, "Good news. One of the last times they happened, they won the national title." Got a nice tweet.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to go there. I don't know what I'm with Drew there. What about you? You think this team can turn around and have a 2014 like season?
It is week 2, so I mean a lot of things could happen, but I think the difference in 2014 when they lost game 2 was that the offense got a lot better. JT wasn't facing a bare front and couldn't do anything kind of deal. The offense actually got better. This offense is already way better than that 2014 offense was at that point, right?
Yes,
so
that's true.
It falls on the defense to improve. So do you think that can happen or not? To me is the thing because Stroud will continue to get better. And I still say I don't think the offensive line was great today, but I'm not going to lose sleep tonight thinking that the offensive line sucks. I don't think that's the case. False starts today, there were some issues up front, but like I said, start listing out issues. Offensive line's probably pretty far down the road.
Yeah. Here's one from Jason Engler. These are all tweets to @11W. Playing defense usually helps win games. Our defense has been terrible for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Exposed. We will lose 5 more games this year with this scheme.
Yeah. I don't know about 5 more games just because the talent advantage that Ohio State will have in a lot of those games against other Big Ten teams, but you still don't want to feel like you have to overcome scheme or coaching. But I mean, like I said, a lot of these players, they need to look in the mirror too. This isn't just on Combs. Go through those list of linebackers we talked about, not named Mitchell. I didn't see any of them do much at all today.
No, none at all. Atron 3000 saying Combs couldn't stop a fart. Farts are hard to stop. I mean, how do you stop a fart?
It depends on your willingness to want to stop it, first of all, and then it's what did you eat that made you potentially have to fart in the first place.
Robbie J saying Ryan Day lost this game.
Yeah,
Curious calls, man. At the end of the first half, the clock manager let some seconds.
Yeah, and that's where Stroud hurt him a little bit, right? Like you basically throw a check down at the end of the last play of the first half, with time running down. That was still a little baffling. I'm not saying the offense was perfect. No, nobody's saying that. To rack up 612 yards like we talked about and score 28 points is kind of tough to swallow. And what did we say? I think they had 4 turnovers on downs today, and 12 or 13 possessions or whatever it was. They might not have 4 turnovers on downs the rest of the damn season. I mean, that's just a
4 in 1 day.
A freakish thing where the offense isn't off the hook, but the offense is not why Ohio State lost today.
Ghost of Gus Bell says, hate to point the finger at one dude, but Munford getting called for holding on 3rd down after Stroud runs for the first down killed us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Again, though, how many penalties is Munford going to have this year?
Yeah,
I feel like I'm making excuses to guys I don't mean to. I'm just not worried about the offensive line.
Right. Well, we had a blast. L's are tough to take, but this team's got some work to do. We'll see next Saturday.
It's a non-conference in game too, right? There's still a lot in front of these guys. There could be more losses looming. Who knows? But today wasn't fatal for the entirety of the season.
Absolutely right. Bucks back in action next Saturday, 3:30 against Tulsa at the Shoe. Horseshoe thought they had a ticket sale problem coming into this.
Yeah, right.
Who's trying to go to the Tulsa game right now, right?
Hope the Green Wave travels.
You got to be diehard. Thanks for joining us here on the 11 Warriors postgame show. We'll be back with you next week.